Hi, I'm Alistair Brogan. I am the owner of Boulder Spirits here in Boulder, Colorado. And what I want to take you through today is how we here at Boulder Spirits make American Single Malt whiskey. We bring all our malted barley in from Scotland. We use a yeast that we imported and it's already malted. What is malting? Malting is basically pretending it's spring. Saturate it with water, pretend it's spring, starts to germinate, shut the germination off by blowing hot air over it. So now you've got this great malted barley, which you then crack open using the mill behind us to make what's called a grist. And that's what we're going to be adding water to change those starches to sugars.
That malting process is designed, you're trying to maximize the amount of sugar in the grain, correct?
Yes. So it's all about yield. So what we're trying to achieve is by getting that grain malted, i.e. the pretending it's spring, and then cracking it open, you want to make sure that the proportions of husk to flour is correct. Because too much flour, things clog up. Too little flour, you're not going to get a yield. And in a lot of distilleries in Scotland, where you're making 30 million bottles a year, 1% is 300,000 bottles. So this stage, it's about yield. It's about maximum extractions of those sugars. So here in the still room, there really is only 4 ingredients in single malt whiskey. There's the malted barley, there's the yeast, there's the water, and there's the new charred oak barrel. There's 2 other major influencers, is the climate and the shape and style of the still.
Who's this guy doing all the work for you?
Hey guys, this is Justin, our distiller, here, working on a Saturday, hard at work. At the end of the day, single malt whiskey is unhopped beer, distilled twice. It is as simple as that. So what we have here is a hot water tank, a grist container, a mash tun, think of a big pot of tea, and a fermenter. All we're doing is we are putting the grist into the mash tun. We're adding hot water, starches start turning to sugars. And once we've got enough sugar, a sugar sweet malty liquid, we then put it through a cooling system into a fermenter. We then pitch yeast. The yeast eats the sugars and creates that unhopped beer that's about 10% alcohol by volume. We now put it through the still twice. And the whole process of distilling is the fact that different chemicals burn off at different temperatures. So this is a Forsyth's copper pot still, 1,000 gallons, designed for us. It's a batch system. You'll notice, and I'll talk about it more, a lin arm, which is 11 degrees pointed down. And this is a unique still really designed for, first of all, malted barley. We don't use column stills here. And secondly, it's distilled to give a heavy whiskey. Heavy whiskey because, as you know, American single malt whiskies go into new charred oak barrels, whereas the rest of the world goes into second fill barrels. So we wanted to have a heavy whiskey to allow that to compete with that new char. So we put it through the still twice. The first distillation, all we're looking to do is you've got alcohol and all its constituent parts and water, a strip run. Alcohol boils at a lower temperature than water, turn on the steam, boiler room next door, steam plates on the floor. All the alcohol, or most of the alcohol, rises, swan neck, lin arm, condenser full of cold water tubes into our beer keg and gets pumped into a retaining tank at the back. That's called low wines. We've converted an unhopped beer, 10% alcohol by volume, to low wines at 30 alcohol by volume. We now go through the process all over again to collect enough low wines to then fill this still to do the second distillation. This time we want to separate 3 chemicals: methanol, ethanol, water. Methanol, kidney failure, blindness, death. Ethanol, what you want to put in the barrels. Water, you want to set aside.
And that's what commonly referred to as the head, hearts, and tails of the industry.
So what we do is we've got heads, hearts, tails. We cut the head off, we cut the tail off, we keep the hearts, we put that in the barrel. Proof it down a little bit and put it in the barrel. We then take the methanol and we take the tails and we put it back into the next distillation.
Okay.
The next, not strip, but the next spirit distillation. Because we're going to pick up more flavors and tastes from that and get more alcohol out of that.
The heads, hearts, and tails, what's the process of separating those? So for especially those rookies that don't know.
Yeah, so if we're talking about 1,000 gallons in the still, when we're doing the spirit run, we're getting about 16 gallons of that methanol. Now the methanol does have ethanol in it, but you can really taste that difference. Once you get to about that 15, 16 gallons, it smells like, tastes like chemical floor cleaner. It's very disgusting. But most people will be able to tell that switch. The skill is being consistent about that switch. So you're not got methanol in and less, because that affects yield and it affects consistency. A little bit of methanol is not a problem, but you've got to be consistent. And then most distilleries will cut off round about the 120. So otherwise you're wasting a lot of energy to extract alcohol. And then you use the methanol and the tails and you put that into the next spirit round, because you're then going to get a lot of flavors of taste from the methanol going back in again. It's basically being re-chopped up. And also you're getting more alcohol because you're putting the tails in. That's the second part of distillation. And really that process, we're doing on a normal day shift, maybe 10 barrels in a week, quite comfortably with that. And then what you'll have seen here, what Justin was doing, was taking all the spent grain, putting it into an agar, going into a trailer, farmer takes it, milking cows get that. The beef cows get all the corn, milking cows get there's still a lot of nutrients and a lot of sugar in that. So this is the still, and you'll notice a lot of bourbons and ryes and wheat whiskies are made in column stills. Column stills are very prevalent in the US. They're industrial, they're continuous, they make a very clean spirit. Malted barley's got a lot of depth of flavor. So what we want to do is a batch system. So what we want to do is have longer for that depth and complexity of the malt to maturate into the water. So we're spending maybe 2 to 2.5 times more in time allowing that to maturate. And this still is from Forsyths in Rothes, and it was designed specifically, as I mentioned earlier, for American Single Malt whiskey. And why is because of the shape and the lin arm. That lin arm is pointing down, 11 degrees to be quite exact. And it's quite a short still. It's got a large swan neck. And what that allows is the big particles to evaporate, go up, come over, down the lin arm, condenser full cold water tubes into our tank. So we want big, heavy whiskey, but heavy whiskey, new oak barrels. So the water we use municipal water at the moment for our processing through a carbon filter, because anything that's not right, and there's nothing that's not right in municipal water here, will be distilled out. So at this point, we don't really are too concerned. However, in all municipal water, you have chlorine, but chlorine burns, chlorine boils off. So we boil the water before we put it in the mash. Where the water becomes important is that distillate from proofing the barrel into the bottle, because what we've got here is our average barrel entry is 120 proof, 60 ABV. So the very best barrels in the world for maturing whiskey is American oak, mainly from the Northeast Missouri oak. They're then taken down, they're air dried, they're taken down to the cooperages in Kentucky. They're then, first of all, toasted, then is charred, just like a piece of bread. They're then charred. The minute you put flame on oak, you get the natural caramelization of the caramels and vanillas in the oak and creates little canyons. We then put our new make spirit in here, we plug it, and then the Colorado climate takes over. And that which makes really Colorado very unique.
One of the misconceptions about aging whiskey in Colorado, some people might think it ages faster because of those things you discussed, but as you guys talk about, it doesn't age faster, it just simply ages differently.
Correct.
And so all that adds to the flavor of your product, correct?
Correct. So yes, we never say that it ages faster, because there's chemical reactions happening in this barrel because of what we do, B, the char, the new oak char, that will not happen in other locations around the world. So if I took this barrel of new make spirit and sent it down to, or up to the Pacific Northwest or down to Texas, and then sampled it, different whiskey. Just like the still, different whiskey, because each of the stills, or the pot stills, will get a different whiskey. The barrel will give you a different whiskey. Straight whiskey is 2 years. We find that even in this climate, 2 years isn't actually enough. Our youngest whiskey that we ever brought out at the very beginning was 3 years. We felt that was right. Our averaging is obviously going up and up. Hence now our 7-year-old American Single Malt whiskey, which we've just launched. So the barrel is vitally important to the whole process. We then store it, we then taste it pretty regularly, and then the next step is the blending. The blending is really important because not all barrels are the same. Maybe 7 out of 10 will be there or thereabouts, and we'll blend them. One will be extremely good at cask strength, and we set that aside. And a couple might be not great, and we put them back in the rack house and hope they get better. So the blending is another real skill of a distillery in ensuring that you have consistency of product.
So out of curiosity, for your particular bottling, how many barrels do you typically blend into a batch?
We tend to blend maybe 6 or 7. And what we did with our cask strength bourbon is every 5 or 6, we taste one taste spectacular, set it aside. And every year we take those ones, retaste them, and then put them in our cask strength bourbon release. But for the single malt whiskey, as we talked about, that barrel has such an impact on the whiskey that we're tasting it way, way more. I mean, in Scotland, they'll put it and they'll not even think about it for at least 10 years. But yeah, it matures differently, and that's the best way of explaining it. The last part of this is really the water. Now, we use municipal water for the processing. Really, when it comes to proofing down from the barrel into the bottle, it makes a world of difference in using a good water. Most Scotch whiskies is deionized water consistency. We use a water that comes from 6 miles down the road, El Dorado water. We trialed it when we first started proofing down the barrel, and it made a world of difference, a huge difference in the quality of the whiskey. And actually, most of the distilleries in Colorado are using local wells or streams for proofing down, and it makes such a difference to your whiskey. So those are the major components in making American Single Malt whiskey.
What are the stories of the stills that you have up on the top there?
Way up here on the roof, we've got 2 stills. The first still was really an experimental still. That was even before my time. The second still is what we were making gin in. So that's about 250 gallon still. But that'll still make 600 bottles of gin a day. So it's still pretty, but it was made by the previous distiller. As far as what you'll see is the line arm and the condenser, but the actual still was, I think it was Spanish. It was brought in from Spain.
Tell us a little bit more about the process. I mean, 7 years, right? Bottled and bond. You had your 7-year bottled and bond, correct? You just released, yes. And your 10 essentials. Tell us a little bit more about that process and the aging, and then like handling all that product as you go through.
We'll have sherry and port. The port barrels are the darker ones. These will be sherry barrels. We've got an Armagnac barrel. So we bring those barrels in from Europe. They are still wet, so they've been recently emptied. We'll have maybe nine litres that is sitting in that wood. That is what we call the devil's cut. It's sitting in the wood, so it's wet. We then put our fully matured whiskey in that. We shake it all about. We leave it for about 8 or 9 months. And most of the whiskey, or most of that sherry or port, is now out into the whiskey. But then what we do is we get secondary flavouring from European oak, French oak. French oak will give you a different flavour profile than American oak. So it's really, and it's very, very traditional for malted barley to be finished in sherry, port, Madeira, Armagnac, etc. Bourbons, not so much. Bourbons are big flavours, not so much, but there's some great finished bourbons on the market. So what we then did with our 10 essentials was we took a sherry, we took a port, we took an Armagnac finished, we took some of our 7-year-old older single malt whiskey, and then we blended it. Now it's not just a blind blend, 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. It took us a long time to get that blend correct, where we get that quality.
So you mentioned the proofing process sometimes for these barrels is up to 4 months. Is that correct?
The proofing process itself, no. The proofing process is maybe maximum 3 weeks. But with the 10 essentials, because we had 3 different finishing barrels, we were taking our time in doing that. And what Ryan was saying about 4 months was more about going away, reblending it in small quantities to get the right blend, because it wasn't 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. It was really It took a long time.
It highlights the amount of love and passion you guys put into your craft. And that's
Well,
impressive.
Thank you. And it's actually interesting because, Ryan would come in and go, taste that. And he would go to other people, the distiller, and we just go, nope. And he'd go back and he'd do it. And, just right. And we don't know what's just right all the time. We just know what's not right. So that just hit. Once he got to that, we thought, whoa, we didn't know what we were going to get. We like that.
So for obviously one of the things we wanted to like to do is promote them buying your product, right?
Sure.
So what's the best way for them to get your product?
So guys, our product is from the distillery, and the best way is to come into the distillery. Well, 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday. We can taste you on all our products, or as many as you can cope with, and you can buy our whiskies. You can take your selection. We're also in all the big major liquor stores. Some of the smaller ones, not so much because they don't have craft spirits. Or if you're out of state, you can go onto our Shopify site and purchase them to be delivered.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank you for your time. Thank you for showing this beautiful facility.
I never get bored of doing this.
If you're in the Boulder area, come check them out. Come meet Alistair, have a drink, and also introduce yourself to Ryan too. So
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.
thank you.